Welcome back to another special episode. You know they're all special. Of Andrew Says. Today we are joined by super producer, chief videographer, and my favorite Turkish celebrity, Mocha Bezirgan, and BlazeTV, Sara Gonzales, the infamous, tweeter of things that cannot be said. She's also a host, and you'll see her pretty much on every BlazeTV show. How are you guys doing today? Thanks for joining me.
Good. Yeah.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us. Mocha is my favorite celebrity from Turkey as well. So
there's like him. There's a few soccer players. I don't know who else I can think of. The first thing I want to
Hello, everyone from Calgary.
Yes, way out in the West. We're coming from 3 different time zones, I think, right now. So it's a very special episode on the Flat Earth. Sara, the first thing I want to talk to you about before we get into other topics, Canadians who might not be familiar with you, they may have just seen your Twitter blow up a bit more when Elon Musk announced that he was buying Twitter. We're waiting for that, Elon. And you said all these things that were supposed to be cancelable, and you went on this big rant. I don't know how many tweets it was. I can't remember everything you said. I know one of them was men can't be women and vice versa. What were some of the other things you said, and did you actually face any backlash from that? Were people trying to get you canceled for that or removed from Twitter?
Oh, yes, 100% people were trying their damnedest to get me removed from Twitter. I kept getting the emails in my inbox. A new report has been received about your account. And actually, I did get an email that my entire profile cannot be seen in France. So if anyone is watching from France, you won't actually be able to go on and see these tweets. But, it was like basic common sense that we used to be able to share without fear that we were going to get banned from social media, only women can get pregnant. Transgenderism is a mental illness. White supremacy is not a major threat to America. Things that really, again, we used to be able to say, and it was not controversial. And I found it funny and also a little bit sad that the state of things, that I was seen as like a hero to so many people. I'm like, I'm just saying basic things that we used to be able to say. How sad is it? A reflection of the state of affairs that I can't just say these things, or I'm held in some high regard because I said these things. It's crazy.
I think it was 2018 or 2019 where Michael Knowles from Daily Wire went on tour with his men cannot be women speech, and they had stuff thrown at him. And now, just a couple years after that, it seems like that's even more banned from just saying these obvious truths. Mocha, do you have any light to shed on that? I know you come from another part of the world where you tell me all the time how this sort of culture is pushed on people.
Well, I'm 22 and I went to broadcasting in college. I didn't go to like philosophy school or whatever. But I was in Turkey when I was 18, and I was producing short films, criticizing the government, criticizing oppressive religion. And what happened to me was that people started complaining to the police, and I had to go to the police station, give statement, blah, blah, blah. Lots of drama. But at the end of the day, as a child growing up in Turkey, because I saw Canada before, I could always compare, and I was more immune to propaganda, government propaganda. And I always thought to myself, you know what, Turkey is going to catch up. It's going to catch up with the first world. It's going to catch up with Canada, with Europe, in terms of religious freedoms, in terms of freedom of speech. But these days, I'm seeing what's happening in terms of censorship on internet. And people just missing the point. People are saying, oh, it's a private company. It's like, yeah, but you're missing the bigger picture here. And you know what I mean? I thought Turkey would catch up, but now it feels like the Western governments are catching up to Turkey. I used to say, look, in the West, they don't do that. They allow people to have different opinions. They allow them to express. And now they could tell me, the authoritarians could tell me, no, look at Europe, look what they're doing. So they could actually rationalize their oppression now. And I used to have at least an ideal, maybe imaginary utopia that existed in my mind. as Europe, Canada, United States. But that is totally, it's it's gone in my mind. So,
Sara, I hear
yeah.
a lot of people use a talking point now that Texas is purple and will eventually turn blue in the next few election cycles. Do you fear that? Do you think it's actually going to happen? And do you fear what Mocha's talking about here, which is basically what's happened to Canada, is that we are sliding into this happy version of authoritarianism?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you look at the amount of people who are migrating into Texas from, say, California, these really blue, heavily blue states, it does tend to worry you because, understand not all of these people are moving because they see Texas as this bastion of freedom. There's a lot that are thinking that, but there are also a lot who are only moving because their company that they work for is now headquartered in Texas and they have no choice but to relocate. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to understand why their company's relocated there and vote accordingly. So it is, I would say this, I think that the greatest fear in Texas turning purple or eventually blue is only because there are so many conservative voters and so many voters in particular that just they're not engaged. They don't vote. They don't go through the process. They don't understand. I mean, my friend Chad Prather was primarying Greg Abbott over here in Texas for Texas governor because, in our opinion here in Texas, I know there are a lot of states who say we would love to have Greg Abbott as governor. He's so conservative. And here in Texas, we're like, he's not conservative enough. So he primaried him, Chad Prather did. And we had so many people who just didn't understand the primary process, conservative voters who were like, you're going to get a Democrat elected. You're going to split the vote. And we had to explain the primary process to them. The primary was held in March 1st, and he still has people asking him how the campaign is going. These are people who think conservatively and have conservative values, but aren't engaged and aren't going through the process. And so that's the scary part to me. It's not that the people are going to change their values. It's that they're not going to participate. And then in the end, we will lose because they didn't participate.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, Chad also had a Facebook lawsuit, which he actually won, which he's hoping, he told me, that will set a precedent. Mocha, we hear a lot of the vote splitting stuff up here. I'm sure you're very familiar with it, with the conservative parties up here. What's your overall opinion on that? Do you I tend to lean towards the vote for who you want to, and if enough people vote for that person, then the right person will, hopefully will become the leader of the party or the state or the country. Do you see any merit to that argument, or do you have any other opinion on that?
Well, as you know, I've been covering the Conservative Party and the PPC, which came out of the Conservative Party, split ways, and it was accused of vote splitting. And as you know, I also covered the convoy and the lockdowns and so on. And I talked to people. And when truckers came to Ottawa to protest the federal mandates, for example, there were nobody standing up with them, no politician. Where was the Conservative Party? Because the Conservative Party under Aaron O'Toole was basically liberal party, but in a different shape. So people were saying, we need an opposition party. We don't need a party that is scared of the media, that is changing its opinion or waiting for the polls to come in to have an opinion. That sort of a conservative party that we had in Canada was really, in my opinion, despicable. People didn't like it. I didn't like it. And what can you do if you're not going to vote for somebody else? Really, you're going to keep voting for the same party that doesn't really stand up for anything? I mean, where were they when the civil liberties were being eroded? Have you ever heard them come out? Have you ever heard Aaron O'Toole? Anyways, Aaron O'Toole is gone now. And there's a new page for the Conservative Party of Canada, it seems. Hopefully they will learn this lesson that you have to have a spine, you have to have values, you have to stand up for them in the hour of need and not change them according to public opinion. I mean, these pools are not that reliable anyways. So,
Sarah, do you still see that? I see that as a huge problem, how much politicians care about, bad people on Twitter being angry, or leftist media who are blatantly and openly leftist. Got an email coming in. I'll get the fax machine going. Do you see a problem with people who are sort of governing by way of Twitter reaction and woke mob reaction? Is that still happening where you are, do you think?
Yeah, it is. And I'd say in particular, what's more frustrating for me, because I see the left doing that a lot. What's more frustrating for me is when the right is more focused on creating these viral tweets or creating these viral videos that they can then post on Twitter and get a bunch of reactions for. And I'm talking about lawmakers instead of actually creating policy, instead of actually trying to do something with their job that they were elected to go do. They'd rather just get the clout on Twitter. And that in particular for me is far more frustrating than, I expect it from the left. I expect them to use random people on Twitter to promote, their agenda and say, look, this is what the American public wants. I don't like it when my own party tries to gain Twitter clout rather than do the things that we elected them to do. And I want to go back to one thing that I want to mention about Texas in particular. I think that it's a blessing in disguise when we have people like Robert Francis O'Rourke, of course he calls himself Beto, running for governor here in Texas, because he's so radical. He's so over the top. He's such a horrible candidate. He's talking about taking people. I mean, literally, think about this. In the state of Texas, which I think you could argue maybe Florida is out Texasing Texas right now, but Texas is supposed to be this land of, bastion of freedom and liberty. And in the state of Texas, you have a person running for governor that is literally telling people he is going to take legally owned firearms from people. And this is something that he recently said. I know he said it when he was running for president and then dialed back down and said, no. I actually want to protect the Second Amendment. I want to protect your rights. Now, of course, after the Uvalde shooting, he's come back out and said things like that. And I think when the Democrats run these very, very radical far left candidates, it's a blessing in disguise for us, because they're not going to gain the ground that they think that they're going to gain. We'll see if I'm right, but I don't see. I've been following Beto O'Rourke out here in Texas. I don't know if you've seen, they kick me out of all of their events because they're afraid that they're going to get asked a tough question. And the main thing that I'm seeing in all of these events that I'm going to is that there's no enthusiasm. There's hardly anyone there. He can hardly fill, he might fill a very small place, but he's not going to fill a very large venue. And I think that there's a reason for that.
Yeah, to your point about them looking for the clips, I mean, that's how the leader of the Conservative Party in Canada took a hold. He would do his little clips where he made fun of Justin Trudeau in Parliament and post them to his YouTube channel, and that's how he got popularity. And I was sitting there thinking, this guy hasn't tabled a bill in 7 years, but he's
Right.
the ultra cool guy who didn't say anything for 2 years during lockdowns, and now that he sees an opportunity to be the only person to say something, he finally does it and sees a weak leader and gets him kicked out and takes his place. And now people are thinking he's going to be the prime minister. And to your point about Beto, of course, who's just an overall ridiculous character. I mean, he's skateboarding.
He's awful.
He's just unintentionally so funny. I think when you do have somebody like that come in, it really shows you how far things have come, because it was the Hillary Clinton days when everybody was saying, nobody wants to take your guns, nobody wants an open border, they just want small changes, nobody wants pure censorship, nobody wants to throw people in jail. But now we see how far it can come, and the people who are hardcore in this leftist authoritarianism, communist dogma, they will keep going and going on pretty much every topic, I think. Now, that's not to say that there aren't moderates on there, but you kind of feel like compelled to say that just to, try to give the small amount of people that are left in the Democrat Party, for example, a chance to breathe and a chance to maybe think that not everybody's against you. But I digress on that point. And I just wanted to say, I think I had one more point there about them saying that they were coming for their guns. And when Matthew McConaughey comes out and he says, we need red flag laws, and you get all these people saying, I'm not really into politics, but I'm going to listen to what Matthew McConaughey says, I think you run into the same problem that you might run into with Joe Biden. And of course, we're on YouTube, so I have my own views about how that went. But even if he's filling no rooms and Joe Biden has truck parking lot events, there's still going to be these people that you assume that are not involved with politics, but they're still going to check mark blue all the way down the ballot because they think that's the obvious choice. Because the Muppets are on Stephen Colbert telling you how evil everybody is, for example. I think that's something that people have to watch out for. And whether it's a crooked way to circumvent election standards or not, these mail-in ballots might be a threat from the people who aren't engaged at all. I don't know if that's true, but that's my thinking. If everything was actually, 100% legit, I'd have to imagine it's the people who aren't involved in politics at all, and they say, hey, blue check mark, and I can just mail this in, and I'll be good to go. Any more points on that? Or I want to talk about drag queens as well. Tough transition there, Mocha.
Who, me?
Anything else on that topic, or should we move on?
I completely agree with you. I think
you
you summed it up quite nicely.
Well, what we're seeing now, Mocha, and I know this is your philosophical side, is a lot of people say that the gender dysphoria and the drag queens and the gender mixing and everything is the symbol of a dying society. How much have you heard about that, Mocha? Do you agree? Do you think it's just something that's been blown out of proportion in terms of how much we see it because of the internet? Or do you think it actually really symbolizes something?
I don't think I used to be very I used to be very liberal-like person in terms of, because where I'm coming from, in Turkey, for example, you can't have pride parades. It's illegal. Like, they will crush you. They will arrest you. They will be done with you. And I think that's bad. But in those years of 2012, 2014, 2015, I mean, what we're seeing today in those pride parades is not the same as what I thought it was back in the days. And with these events that are happening in the United States where kids are present and, you have a wall that reads, it's not going to lick itself. I mean, what is this? I don't know if it's a sign of a dying society, but in my opinion, it's perverted. And we are seeing, have we ever seen any government official speak out against it? Are they afraid of it? Is there a public opinion that is supporting this? What's going on here? Does anybody know? Has any government official speak out against this?
Sarah, there is that who's the Texas politician who's tabling a bill to try to ban children for being at drag events? I know I'm putting you on the spot there, but
No. It's Brian Slayton.
Okay.
Representative Brian Slayton here in Texas. But I mean, it's sad that even has to be said. There is a law that bans minors from being at like sexually explicit events, but I guess the way that it's worded is too vague for them to be able to say, look, you have to do something about this now to law enforcement. But can I give my opinion on all this drag stuff?
No opinions allowed here.
Well, I didn't want to. I know you asked me who it was, so I jumped in and I didn't want to steal the floor from anyone.
I would love for it to be more free flowing.
Yes. Yeah. So, look, I'm coming at this from both a mother and also someone who obviously is an activist for my particular. I mean, I host a television show, but I obviously am a strong proponent of conservative values. I'm sure that comes as no shock to anyone, but just looking at this is so infuriating to see the excuses being given, to hear people liken my choice to not have my son wear a mask and be suffocated in his school to taking a child to drag. And what I mean by that is, well, I thought that you guys were all about parental rights. Yes, but we're not about child abuse. There's obviously a line. I mean, if you want to take that out to its extreme, yeah, I'm for parental rights. That doesn't mean that I think that if a mom wants to murder her child, that it should be okay because it's her parental right. I mean, you have to obviously draw the line. I completely agree with you. It is a symptom of a dying, decaying society. And I have to tell you, when I just watched over the weekend that Christina Aguilera was wearing a strap on while performing at a family friendly event in LA for LA Pride, I about lost my mind because this is not a crowd of people that I want to share a society with. It's just not. And I know that they feel the same way about me and my values. So I wish that there was a way that I wish that there was a way that we could just have a national divorce and just break up amicably. Of course, I'm not calling for a civil war, but it's just the perversion that is in these people's minds, that they think that there's any sort of justification for bringing a child to any sort of sexually explicit parade, show, whatever you want to call it, is just beyond me. It's sick. And it really does give a lot of credibility and vindication to the entire crowd who talked about whenever the subject of same-sex marriage came up. They said, this is a slippery slope and this is where it will lead. And I mean, look, I didn't agree at the time. I was like, come on, we're not going to be talking about people having adults having sex with children. We're not going to be talking about, normalizing pedophilia and changing the term to minor attracted persons. We're not going to be talking about that. Surely society is not going to stoop that low. And they were completely vindicated, because here we are talking about whether or not it should be okay for parents to take their kids to drag shows and tip drag queens while they dance provocatively in front of them, and take them to a Christina Aguilera concert, a Pride concert, a family-friendly event, they say, where she's wearing a strap-on and there's simulated sex acts. Like it's just beyond me that we've fallen this far as a society.
Christina Aguilera.
I totally agree. Yeah.
A long stretch from Genie in the Bottle. Sarah, I want to know, do you think... yeah. Christina, what happened? I want to ask you, though, do you think this was a slow burn? Like, I completely agree with the slippery slope, and I can even think of my brother, who's a very Catholic man, saying that he thought these things were coming. Even a couple years ago, John Doyle was saying the slippery slope was real, and I've always remembered that. But do you think this was sort of a natural progression to get where this group of people are? Or do you think that with guns and with the border and with everything else, frankly, they're seeing a chance to throw I'm going to say but the most extreme values at the wall and see if it sticks as sort of like a last gasp, or it's going to be the tipping point to their point of view winning? Do you see that as the strategy here, or do you think it's a natural progression of people who have let the ball roll, and all of a sudden this is where the culture in their society is, where you see teenagers at Pride saying like, oh, it's great that small children are here, it's completely normal?
Yeah, I do think that it's a natural progression. I think that it's the natural progression when you're talking about, you're normalizing perversion. I think that is the natural progression of where it's going to lead. And I will say this, I don't think that they're going to win. I think that it's a tipping point that's happening right now in society. I don't think they're going to win because there are too many normal parents. There are too many parents who care about their children to allow this to just become normal in society. And I think that, as the left always does, they've overplayed their hand entirely. And there are a lot of people in the gay community that don't want to associate with this particular special interest group anymore, because the perverted radical part of that sector of people are the ones who are showing up at the events, who are running the events. And gay people are even saying, okay, you guys are actually trying to erase us, because we were just saying this is how we're born and we just happen to love, the same sex. Now you're trying to tell people, if they're gay, that they might just actually be a woman instead. And so I think that they've overplayed their hand. You're going to see even a split, even within that community, because they've gotten so crazy. But I have to believe that they're not going to win this one. I really do. There are too many people who would agree with them on every other point except sexualizing children.
Yeah, I'm seeing what I would call a record amount of pushback on all of this, with the drag queens and with the story times. And I think that this is well overdue for people to have to actually answer questions about this, because, of course, as we saw in Matt Walsh's documentary, if you haven't seen it, go watch What is Woman. It's actually just answering simple questions that really cripples the psyche of some of these people, because they've never had to actually explain themselves. They've never had to have a rational argument for what they think. It's just, as long as I feel it, it's okay. And Mocha, with what's happening now, with everything I mentioned being thrown against the wall, we're seeing record inflation numbers. I know you've been talking for, I think, 2 years, to me personally, about the inflation coming, because Turkey's inflation is astronomically larger than Canada or the United States. Why do you think this has happened? Do you think it's part of this World Economic Forum plan? I think it's hard to say that for Turkey in itself, but why do you think this global inflation is happening, and very quickly?
Yes, before I get into that, I would also like to add to our previous discussion. I think it is great disservice by the public schools and teachers and unions and any institution that supports them in terms of allowing them to teach sexual stuff to children. Can you just teach children education, like philosophy, history, I don't know, something that is going to be useful for the rest of their lives? Why are you so obsessed with teaching them sex education or sexualized stuff or drag queen story time, Black Lives Matter or land acknowledgement, this or that? Can you just, like, even on a Zoom meeting in Canada, they're reading land acknowledgement and what laws govern, and Black Lives Matter, blah blah blah. It's like, is this a school or is this some ideological indoctrination camp? In any event, yes, inflation. I mean, before all the pandemic happened, inflation was always happening anyways. As you know, the US dollar has lost its 98% or so of its value over the last 100 years. And same with Canadian dollar, same with any other paper currency. I mean, as I think it was Voltaire who said, paper money eventually returns to its own intrinsic value, which is zero. So it's nothing surprising to me, and I've been saying this. And now you see the Bank of Canada representatives, for example, saying, oh, yeah, we mismanaged. Oh, yeah. The whole media, even in the United States, even Joe Biden. Oh, yeah, it's transitory. It's not going to happen. Don't worry about it. It's like, who are you kidding? The guy in the street knows the inflation is coming. You, the president, you, the representative of a bank, acting like it's not coming. I mean, oh yeah, all these years, all these decades, the inflation always has happened. Our money in our pocket has always lost its value. But magically, after 2 years of shutting down the economy and the supply chain, what was going to happen? Our currency, our value was going to go up. I don't know. I'm not an economist, so.
Why do you think? Why you want to explain to people why it's so much worse in Turkey and why it's accelerated so much faster?
Oh, Turkey! It's total incompetence. It's not about world. What was it called? Economic Forum or something. It's total government incompetence. Okay, and it's this resistance to facts and resistance to the reality for political gains. They just don't want to accept that they're in an economic crisis. They don't want to accept that they have messed up, because if you accept, then you can find some cures. Instead, they double down. The politicians I'm talking about, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the president, he comes out and he says, oh, we're not going to increase interest rates because it's against Islam. It's against Allah's word. Really? I was about to curse, sorry. You're going to determine millions of people whether or not they're going to be able to buy bread at the end of the day. You're going to determine your political policy on Islam? Really? And that's not surprising. He likes to play those, he likes to do that because the lower class in Turkey, they are mostly Muslim and they like the struggle, they enjoy for example, yes, now I have to wait in the line for subsidized bread, but yes, you know, my president, he's standing up to the United States, he's standing up to Israel, he's standing up to the world, so I will suffer gladly. So it's like people are living for the afterworld and not living for this world. And the youth in Turkey are going crazy. They're like, what are you doing? Wake up. You're in subsidized bread line. But so there's no, they just don't want to accept that they're in an economic crisis. So it goes on and on and on. And nothing's going to change. They say we're against interest rates because of Islam, but they do actually raise interest rates, but they don't call it a hike in the interest rates. So it's like a 70 chessboard that they're playing.
Well, I think we see Justin Trudeau doing the same thing here, but not with Islam, his own religions of his leftism, of climate change. We can't get rid of the carbon tax because we're going to destroy the earth, you know, that sort of thing. We can't get rid of the mandates because of COVID religion. All this stuff that would...
Science.
Yeah. All this stuff that would help people's lives, we can't do because this is as low as we can go, and we can't disrespect our dogma. Sarah, we saw earlier this month, I want to say, and last month, the baby formula shortage, and that was something that actually hit Biden now. And now I don't know if you've seen this, but there's apparently a tampon shortage as well, and we're calling it for menstruating people as well. I want to throw that in there because I want your reaction from that too.
Yeah,
Selfishly.
I mean, I feel like anyone who's confused should just check my Twitter. I was very clear. Only women can get periods. There's no reason to say menstruating persons. It's just women. It's very simple.
Wow, this is very bigoted.
I know. I'm all the phobics. That's me. I'm told. But yeah, you know, it's really sad that we're living in. I'm in America. This is supposed to be a first world country. And we're really talking about, I mean, the baby formula shortage was no joke. There were kids who were hospitalized because they didn't have formula for so long, and they had to go to the hospital and receive fluids and, you know, and get fed. And so, look, it's a really sad state of affairs, especially when you consider when you're talking about not just the baby formula, not just the tampon shortage, not just all of the food shortages that we're having. We have people going to the supermarket who can't get chicken, not just all of those things, but also back to your, you know, point about inflation and the price of oil and gas. All of these things were manufactured. It didn't have to be that way. There is not a crisis that's happening right now in America that was not a completely manufactured crisis. And I know you said this is YouTube, so I want to be very careful with my words here. But you mentioned the World Economic Forum earlier, and I would say it's not a coincidence that all of these crises are being manufactured all at the same time, while they're saying, as Mocha pointed out, they're saying, well, don't worry, it's just transitory. And, you know, we're going to have to feel some pain before we move to green energy. But hey, never let a crisis go to waste. So now's the time to move to green energy. These are not coincidences that all of these things are happening at the same time. And they're literally saying the quiet parts out loud. They're literally saying, never let a crisis go to waste. Now is the time to move to do all of these things that we actually wanted to do. At the expense of you people, you peons, American public, who are going to be the ones who really are bearing the brunt of all of the inflation, of the cost of groceries, of the cost of gasoline. These are elitists who don't care because they already have their Teslas, and they're not going to feel the raise in the grocery bill. They're not going to feel because they're set. But it's the American public who's suffering, and they're going, how is this all happening right now? Look, as we know, Joe Biden, most popular president in American history, 81 million votes in the most safest and secure election ever. I hope that however many people that voted for him, they're really looking at themselves and saying, why didn't we listen to everyone who told us that this was going to happen? It's just really frustrating. I'm like, this isn't supposed to be America. We're not supposed to have shortages and talk about this kind of thing. And it just really, I hope that it shows, you know, not just Americans, but all of the other countries, just how bad, how quickly you can fall when you don't have the right leadership in place.
Yeah, and we can talk about Klaus Schwab on YouTube. We have a whole Great Reset documentary on YouTube. Klaus, I don't love you.
Great. Yeah.
The whole, and you're talking about inflation. A lot of the almost every bank in Canada is listed on the World Economic Forum's partner website, their partnership there. So that's a good sign of places to look. And so are many politicians. Many of the Canadian politicians are listed on there, and it seems like they were removed at a later time, probably for their own image. And it shines through in some of the things they say in the past. And I know, Mocha, you probably know Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party, was on there. Michelle Rempel-Garner, who is a very, she's very woke. Sarah, probably not familiar with this girl, but she's a member of our parliament here. And she talked about the toxic male whiteness of the Conservative Party. And she's from a rural area, and she talked about...
my neighborhood in Calgary.
Yeah, and she talked about biphobia and how bad that is. Just all these things. And the former leader was in on this as well. And that's part of the reason why they lost, their spot. She's still there, but he lost his leadership position because they were going so far into the liberal realm that there was exactly no difference. And we faced those complaints from our audience a year and a half, 2 years ago, of vote splitting. And how dare you guys criticize this person when we're trying to get Justin Trudeau out? And then you fast forward to a year and a half later, and everybody understands why people were against that. And now we're facing it again for pointing it out in the new people. And I think it's just a perpetual cycle of people want whoever is worst out, and then we'll deal with the next person. That's a very big problem, I think, in Canadian politics. It's voting people out and not voting people in. Mocha, is there anything else you want to touch on that, on inflation, before we move to our last segment, Behind the Paywall?
What can I say? It's true. Those elites, they don't care about the little people. In fact, they ridicule them. I mean, they're talking about climate change causing mental illness problems. And it's like, just these people who write these articles, these people who nonstop talk about these things, do they ever go outside? Do they ever talk to, I don't know, other people outside of their bubble?
No, the answer is no.
Those are not the real problems. The people of this country, the majority of the people of this country, are worried about inflation. In just the new news, because of the interest rate hikes. In Canada, they're saying 1 out of 4 people might lose their house. But no, it's climate change more important, right? Sorry, yeah.
All right, I want to move behind the paywall for one more talk about guns and gun ownership and gun rights that's happening in the United States. So go to rebelnewsplus.com to sign up for just $8 a month. Netflix just went up. Why would you not pay to see more of Mocha and Sarah? Of course, 9Mocha on Instagram and Mocha Bezirgan on Twitter. And you can find his page on rebelnews.com. And of course, Sara Gonzales TX on Twitter and her show News and Why It Matters. Am I getting that right, Sarah? For my memory.
Yes, yeah, you got it. It's a mouthful. I know. I didn't choose the title.
Well, now it's just going to be the Sara Gonzales show, if I have anything to say about it.
There you go.
That's on BlazeTV, so be sure to go follow her spicy Twitter. I had underlined earlier, Sarah, why does it say spicy bitch on your Twitter profile?
It's a fun story. So one of my viewers alerted me to some guy who, I guess, I don't know, he's got 40,000 subscribers or something to his YouTube channel, and was mad at one of my tweets that I made in my tweet storm about Black nationalism being a greater problem than white supremacy in America. And he was very mad and made this whole YouTube video about how horrible I was, and somehow thought it was an insult to tell me, well, not to tell me, but to tell all of his viewers. He said, Sara Gonzales is a spicy bitch. And I was like, I am totally using that. I love it. So we're creating an entire brand around it.
I was going to say.
We're working on shirts. we're working on hot sauce. We're going to have it all. And we're just going to lean into it because I thought to myself, he's right. I am.
Thanks for watching another episode of Andrew Says. To get the full version of the show with bonus segments, go to rebelnewsplus.com and sign up now.